The Nintendo DS. Double the screens, double the copies sold of Active Health with Carol Vorderman than any one man can feasibly track. Nintendo's little flipper of wonders might have had a lot of games, and a lot of them were bad, but make no mistake, it also had all-time whippers like these 50 amazing games that should all land in your library. The DS and party games might sound like a bit of a strange mix, but tell that to Hudson Soft. Now, you probably think that Bomberman is about the cute little guys chucking bombs at each other, and you would be correct. Hey, there is a battle mode here that lets players relive the glory days of Bomberman, but Bomberman Land, and specifically Touch, has a bit more to offer. Touch is all about exploring the different sections of an amusement park. You'll wander through an overworld, solve puzzles to unlock new areas, and then compete in minigames that can support up to 10 human players, making this an unmistakable multiplayer game highlight on the Nintendo DS. Chibi Robo was perhaps the most original platformer on the Nintendo GameCube, so a follow-up was inevitable. What was unexpected was that in order to go bigger, Nintendo and Skip Limited actually went smaller, bringing the sequel to the Nintendo DS. The result might not have set the world alight, earning awards like 5th most overlooked game from 2007, but we'll always know it's a whipper here. Park Patrol sees Chibi Robo, that's the miniature mecha that could, ditch the house for a public park. Fortunately, life for the 4-inch tall robot is less like the survival game Grounded and more like a wholesome day out. Sure, there are some enemies to deal with, but for the most part, this is a chill, low-stakes platforming affair that players of all ages can enjoy. Originally a hidden minigame in the Xbox exclusive racer Project Gotham Racing 2, shout out to Bizarre Creations, you absolute beauties, Geometry Wars came into its own when the Xbox 360 launched. There was a separate game, the most downloaded Xbox Live Arcade game at one point, plus sequel along with a new iteration in PGR4, but Bizarre brought the series to Nintendo platforms too. Enter Geometry Wars Galaxies, which contained all the usual shape-shooting action you'd expect from the series, only this time with a full campaign mode. We're talking 10 whole galaxies of levels, each with their own maps, challenges, and enemies to fight. You even get your own personal drone. A lot of firsts for the series, Galaxies was deep yet fun and rewarding all at once. Make some room in your library for it. The Nintendo DS became home to plenty of visual novel / point-and-click genre blends. Turns out giving developers a touchscreen and a stylus meant games with a lot of clicking. Hotel Dusk Room 215 isn't the only example we're mentioning in this video, but don't let its lower position in this ranking fool you, because this mystery is well worth your time and energy. In Hotel Dusk Room 215, players control former NYPD detective Kyle Hyde as he explores the titular rural Los Angeles hotel looking for his missing former partner. Along the way, Kyle will stumble into a variety of other interconnected mysteries, forcing the detective to rely on his years of NYPD experience. The game even comes complete with an in-game notepad for you to jot down your theories, so you really can make use of that stylus. Ask anyone to name an underrated RPG series and chances are they will say Golden Sun. Considering that the series started out life on the GBA, a Nintendo DS release was always going to be on the cards. It might have taken 8 years, but surely Dark Dawn would give the series new life? Actually, it's the last ever Golden Sun, but Dark Dawn shouldn't have been what sent the series into a premature twilight. Golden Sun Dark Dawn is set 30 years after the events of the original 2 games. Players control descendants of the heroes of those games, as they try to solve the mystery of various psi-energy vortexes sapping the world of its elemental energy. As a game, Golden Sun Dark Dawn offers similar gameplay to the previous entries, albeit with some new spells and djinns to collect and use, but more of a good thing is always fine with us. From one Game Boy Advance graduate to another, Mario vs Donkey Kong allowed Nintendo to revisit the feud between Plumber and Primate. After Bowser was introduced, Mario and DK kind of became their own separate franchises for a while, but Mario vs Donkey Kong allowed them to revisit past rivalries, only with a horde of mini Mario toys to fight over. The 4th game in the series, Miniland Mayhem, sees DK once again kidnapping Pauline because he was later getting a mini Pauline toy. Why settle for an imitator, I guess? Essentially Lemmings, only with a touchscreen and stylus. You need to navigate mini Marios to the exit in order to complete the over 200 levels on offer here. If that's not enough bang for your buck, there's even a level editor, giving players a small taste of the creation tools they'd have later with Super Mario Maker. Another DS RPG that unfortunately killed the series, Lufia Curse of the Sinistrals in 2010, was Neverland's attempt after 8 years to revive the series. Unfortunately, Neverland filed for bankruptcy only a few years later, but much like Dark Dawn, Lufia Curse of the Sinistrals doesn't deserve to be the game that ended the whole series. You want an underappreciated action RPG? Yeah, this is it. A remake of Lufia 2, itself a prequel to the first game, Lufia Curse of the Sinistral follows Maxim and his growing party of adventurers as they try to deal with the Sinistral threat. A big departure from the 1995 Super Nintendo original, Curse of the Sinistrals swapped the turn-based combat for action RPG gameplay, with players using the party's spells and special abilities to solve puzzles as well as fight enemies. Even as a standalone RPG, Lufia Curse of the Sinistrals shouldn't be missed and is just super fun. As puzzle games go, none take themselves less seriously than Scribblenauts, a game where half of your problems are solved by summoning Cthulhu. Cat stuck up a tree? Cthulhu. Bank robbery? Cthulhu. New experimental pizza topping, shockingly, also Cthulhu. Scribblenauts might sound like a game for just artistic sorts, but there's so much charm on offer here that it's impossible for everyone not to love it. For the uninitiated, Scribblenauts is the game where you solve puzzles by typing out words that summon the corresponding object. You then use those summoned objects, creatures, or even people to solve puzzles across various levels and worlds. It's silly, whimsical, and funny, everything that a handheld puzzle game should be. Super Scribblenauts is more of that same formula, only with the added functionality of adjectives, so if you want to see what a massive pregnant purple Cthulhu looks like, play Super Scribblenauts. And you should. I'm curious now, actually. Given that it's named similarly to Super Mario 64 DS, Yoshi's Island DS sounds like a mere updated port of Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Instead, it's a full sequel, with Baby Mario and Yoshi working together to protect other babies from the clutches of Bowser and Kamek. One of the babies also happens to be a baby Bowser, so there's weird time shenanigans going on. Enough questions, just keep throwing eggs. The gameplay is largely the same as the first game, only with 2 screens to line up egg throws. What makes Yoshi's Island distinct is the introduction of other babies for Yoshi to carry around, with each one offering their own ability to help with platforming. You'll need to swap babies regularly, that's a hell of a sentence, throughout the game's levels in order to finally succeed. The graphics are cute, the gameplay is great, and the abilities are fun, making Yoshi's Island DS an easy recommendation. In the 2000s, it felt like the Trauma Center series would be a hit for Atlus that would rival even Shin Megami Tensei or Persona. Those games felt nigh on inescapable at the time, so it's surprising then that there were only 5 whole games of the franchise across DS and Microsoft Wii. Still, do you want the at DS's best? Well, you're looking at it. Playing as Dr. Derek Stiles, Trauma Center as the Knife is set in the near future of 2018, where most natural diseases have been eradicated. Clearly, that means it's time for man-made horrors beyond comprehension, as terrorists begin distributing the parasite called guilt. Using Stiles' surgery skills and healing touch, you use your stylus to operate on guilt victims, enjoying a dramatic story of intrigue and bioterrorism in between operations. It's pretty good fun. Looking for a visual novel tour de force that's as fun and confusing a time on a cruise ship as the film Triangle? Well, 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors is a delight. It's also a game that you don't have to dig the DS out for if you want to play it today, as it was updated and released on modern platforms along with a port of the sequel, Virtue's Last Reward, as Zero Escape the Nonary games. While players control Junpei, 999 follows 9 kidnapped main characters as they're forced to compete in a deadly game on a cruise ship. The game is split into 2 portions, as the visual novel moves the plot forward while allowing the player to make story-affecting choices. Between those are escape sections, where you explore different locked rooms to find the items necessary to escape. It's basically a life or death escape room, and that's a lot more fun than it sounds. Atlus's Etrian Odyssey might have been tailor-made for the DS, offering old-school RPG and dungeon crawling gameplay while making excellent use of the Nintendo DS's touchscreen and stylus to offer something entirely new. Sure, it is a difficult game, so if you're looking for a more casual experience, something like Etrian Odyssey 2 Heroes of Lagard might not be for you, but for sheer excellence, this is worth playing. The game opens with the Duke of Lagard calling for adventurers to reach a flying castle by navigating the Yggdrasil Labyrinth, essentially a dungeon in a giant tree. Players are able to create up to 30 characters with various classes, stats and abilities to then take a party of 5 on the journey to the labyrinth. With turn-based combat and the ability to use the stylus to maintain your dungeon maps, Etrian Odyssey 2 is an engaging and deep RPG worth investing your time into. From a Flash game to a DS game, N+ is a perfect example of a stellar platforming game that deserves a lot more love than it actually received. Many point to Super Meat Boy as an example of a hardcore platforming Flash game that made the transition to console to great success. But N+ has Super Meat Boy beat by 2 years. It's time to give N+ its flowers, we say. Controlling a ninja, players navigate small mazes and platforming puzzles on a very strict timer. You can increase your overall time by collecting gold pieces, but the often ridiculous amount of droids, turrets, mines and missiles that plague any of the game's many levels stand in your way. Naturally, you are killed in one hit, but you have infinite lives and instant restarts, making N+ an excellent example of an addictive one more go platformer. Just be warned though, hair being torn out is a distinct possibility. Before Sonic Mania, the obvious contender for best 2D Sonic game since the originals was Sonic Rush. If nothing else, it was the Sonic game that most tested your abilities to follow a cute creature on screen at any one time, considering Sonic Rush decided to use the dual screen setup to have its characters racing across both screens. It's also famous for having a final boss theme that uses samples from a Malcolm X speech. Absolutely ludicrous, we love it. Sonic Rush sees newcomer Blaze the Cat on the hunt for Eggman, while Sonic chases down Eggman from Blaze's dimension. Players pick either character and race across several zones in classic Sonic 2D platforming action, albeit with 3D-ish bosses and the tension gauge that allows players to use tricks to create boost power. I guess we have Sonic Rush to thank for modern Sonic games becoming booster-thons? Thanks, Sonic Rush. Unless you're a hardcore Okami fan, hello, you might not know that there was a follow-up release on the DS. Hell, when Hideki Kamiya announced an Okami sequel in 2024, everyone at that announcement forgot there was also Okami Den. It's a shame really, as this takes everything that worked about the first Zelda-inspired adventure and applies it to a new game with an admittedly cuter protagonist and a console that lets you wield the celestial brush like an actual brush. Set after the events of the original Okami, demons have returned to Nippon and the humans try once again to summon Amaterasu to rescue them. She is a wee bit busy though, so her son, Chibitarasu, answers the call. Chibitarasu has the powers of the Celestial Brush, but needs to explore the world and team up with partners in order to save it. It is a pretty inventive sequel that deserves much more attention. It's clear that there's a cozy game boom going on right now, but instead of Microsoft immediately telling Rare to create a new Viva Pinata game, they've had the UK developers fumbling about with Everwild instead. Is that even still a thing? Yeah. A new Viva Pinata would probably do pretty well right now, and if the quality is anything like Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise, they'd be onto a winner. Pocket Paradise follows much the same gameplay as its home console counterparts. You're looking after cute creatures, getting them to mate while creating the perfect environment to attract new pinatas. Between the map on the dual screen and the stylus interaction, Pocket Paradise fits the DS like a glove. It's a game you'll boot up for just 5 minutes, then wake up 6 hours later from your fugue state with an immaculate garden and drool hanging out of your mouth. The DS might be home to a lot of remakes, but with a stylus and touchscreen, of course developers are going to try and explore new ways to experience classics. 2003's Disgaea Hour of Darkness for the PS2 might not have been out long enough to be a classic as such, considering it only took 3 years to release it on the PSP as Afternoon of Darkness, and another 2 for the DS release, but it did bring an excellent tactical RPG to a larger audience. Disgaea DS is essentially the DS port of the PSP version, including new features like the alternative protagonist Etna and a suite of multiplayer modes. Granted, some language options were removed due to the limited storage space on the DS cartridge, but the DS version did throw in new features like demon gadgets and more unlockable characters. For those wanting an excellent tactical RPG about defending the Netherworld, Disgaea DS is your best bet. Viewers of our GBA videos will know we're suckers for mentioning Boktai, so it's probably not a surprise to see Lunar Knights placed fairly high here. It might not be called Boktai, it might not have solar ray scanning like those original games did, but the core gameplay, the vampire fighting, and everything in between is as Boktai as it gets. Plus, if you did own the GBA Boktai games, you could chuck them in the DS's second slot and enjoy some additional sun-sensing benefits. Lunar Knights follows the edgy Lucian with his darkness powers and the more hopeful sharpshooter Aaron, who can harness light powers. Together, they'll fight through various dungeons, defeat the boss vampires, and send their caskets off into outer space. Each boss unlocks a new element which can be used to change the in-game climate and access new areas. To defeat climate change, we clearly just need to beat up a few bosses. It's that simple. Not to be confused with Anno 1701 Dawn of Discovery, Anno Create a New World, or simply Dawn of Discovery as it was known in North America, is the better game. They're in the same series, but there's a 300-year difference in terms of setting. While Anno 1701 Dawn of Discovery adds a couple more features, with multiplayer being the most crucial addition, Create a New World streamlines a stuffy yet mechanically deep strategy game for handheld platforms, which is no small feat. Create a New World offers two modes of play, with a story mode following King George's sons, William and Edward, who are looking to solve their kingdom's drought and famine issues. Edward thinks force is the only option, so you play as William and try to establish negotiations and trade with other nations. It's essentially a tutorial for the game's continuous mode, where you establish your colonies and battle rival nations. If you want a Civ-style strategy game on the go, Create a New World is pretty dang good. Die-hard Tony Hawk fans will remember American Wasteland, the Hawkman's first attempt at a fully open-world skating game, but it was basically 8 levels connected by long-arse corridors. Still, what's more overlooked is the handheld tie-in game called Tony Hawk's American Skateland. Yes, it uses the number 8 instead of spelling it properly, don't worry about it though. Though similar to Wasteland, Skateland has a few key differences. Both follow a young skate rat who travels to LA to totally shred gnarly style. Dude. In Skateland though, you're recruited by Tony Hawk specifically, with American Skateland being the name of one of Tony's old stomping grounds. You'll meet pros, do sick tricks, and ultimately try to restore American Skateland. I'm getting tired of saying that now. While you can't get off your board here, you can use the touchscreen to create art and a microphone for sound clips during special tricks and bails. It is one of the more creative skating games of all time. Clearly, Capcom localizing a former Japan-only GBA game in Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney was the right decision, as Capcom are still milking the Ace Attorney series in its many forms to this day. To think it all started with just a simple DS port of a visual novel. No one has any objections to more Phoenix Wright these days, that's for sure. If you somehow don't know what Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is all about, you control the titular rookie defense attorney as he's thrown into the deep end of massive murder trials, forced to help the prime suspect prove their innocence. The game is split into 2 halves, with players investigating the crime scene and the evidence before being launched into the courtroom itself. Here, they need to poke holes in the prosecution's arguments using the previously gathered evidence, facts, and statements to do so. Who knew courtroom drama could be so engaging? Rhythm Heaven isn't the first ever rhythm action game, but the genre received a new standard bearer when it launched on the Nintendo DS. Granted, it follows the Phoenix Wright issue of being a Japan-only GBA release first, with Rhythm Tengoku relaunching on the GBA in 2006, but it would only take 3 short years for Nintendo to release the sequel worldwide. Each one of Rhythm Heaven's 50 levels requires players to use the stylus and touchscreen to keep up with the beat by listening and following visual clues, with the levels themselves ranging in style and animation. Like other rhythm action games, Heaven is not an easy game to truly master, with some of those later remix levels truly testing your ability to stay on beat and memorize patterns, but if Guitar Hero on Tour and its weird grip pad thingy wasn't doing it for you, Rhythm Heaven was the upgrade. The Nintendo DS library got really obsessed with puzzle games that were designed to improve your cognitive abilities, from whatever licensed versions of Sudoku featured a D-list celebrity, the various brands of brain training, or the subject of this entry, Picross. Also known as nonogram puzzles, Picross is art meets logic puzzle, using numbers to guide players on what squares they can press. Picross gives players a square grid with numbers on the side and top, with the numbers determining how many coloured blocks are present in that row. Using that information, you need to reveal the image. Picross 3D takes the formula and literally cubes it, giving players an extra dimension to solve in order to reveal 3D images of various things. Naturally, adding a whole other side of things makes the puzzles more intimidating, but think of the years of cognitive ability you'll earn next time Dr. Kawashima gets you in a corner. Tja, you thought you might get through a Cultured Vultures video without some kind of treasure mention, you fool. For anyone looking for amazing shoot-'em-up action, Bangai O Spirits is unmissable. A sequel to a shoot-'em-up that originally released on the N64 and Dreamcast, Bangai O took the tagline of "Be the bullet hell" literally way before Vampire Survivors arrived on the scene. As a sequel, Bangai O Spirits is more of the same style follow-up, albeit with a host of new gameplay abilities. The core of the game revolves around EX attacks, which unleashes a barrage of missiles in either every direction or against one specific enemy. The catch is that the closer you are to enemies and the longer you charge it, the more missiles you fire, to the point where the entire screen is just missiles. Everything is missiles, it's always been missiles, it will always be missiles. Bangai O, you beautiful beast. We're definitely not the first people to note this, but did you ever clock how some DS games would have a subtitle with the letters D and S? Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor could be considered as guilty of this too, but then you have to remember that Devil Summoner preceded this game by about a decade, so there goes that theory. Anyway, it does have Persona 5 Tactica beat on being the first SMT related tactical RPG, so there. Another offshoot of the SMT franchise, not another one, Devil Survivor tells a brand new story of a lockdown within a specific area of Tokyo due to the appearance of demons. Fortunately, gaming devices known as comps can be used to forge contracts with demons. Using your comp in tactical RPG battles, you need to forge relationships with the various characters and factions and spend your time wisely across 7 days, otherwise everyone in the story will die. No pressure or anything? Alright, so here we go. Devil Survivor might not have been the best example, but Peggle Dual Shots? We got you by the short and curlies there, PopCap Games. Joke's on us though, as there's not even a dual shot in the game, just a collection of the original Peggle and its DLC, Peggle Knights, albeit with about 10 extra unlockable levels created by Q Entertainment, the team responsible for the DS port. Peggle can easily be described as the pachinko puzzle game, with players firing balls with a goal to clear red pegs off the screen. Hit every red peg, you win, but clear every red and blue peg, and you score even more points. With hardly any exclusive features beyond using the stylus to control aiming, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Peggle DualShock doesn't deserve its place here, but when the gameplay is just generally as addictive as Peggle's is, it deserves all the flowers in the world. WayForward's late 2002 Game Boy Color release might have ensured Shantae would struggle to find an audience, even though you could easily play GBC games on the GBA. Even so, those who did pick up the game despite its late release found a charming and absorbing platformer with light Metroidvania elements, so they were no doubt thrilled when, 8 years later, WayForward released a sequel for the Nintendo DS. Now technically the Shantae sequel was a DSiWare exclusive game, with the DSi being a revised DS with built-in camera and online support. It's still technically a DS though, so we're including it. Sue us. Actually, please don't. That'd be a waste of time. We've got no money. Titled Shantae Risky's Revenge, the sequel doubled down on the Metroidvania elements, with the titular half-genie chasing down the pirate Risky Boots in order to retrieve a stolen magic lamp. With plenty of abilities to unlock and secrets to find, Shantae was proof that DSiWare games could stand up to the bigger counterparts. It feels like Atlus might have had a bit of a chokehold on the DS, as plenty of their excellent RPGs rank among the best DS games of all time. Radiant Historia is another one that deserves more recognition, but often feels overlooked. Considering Atlus love re-releasing or remaking their older games, perhaps now is the time for them to bring Radiant Historia to non-handheld platforms too. Set in a war-torn continent, Radiant Historia follows Stock, a young lad given a book called the White Chronicle. With this, he can travel through separate timelines to unravel the mystery of the Sand Plague, and that's an affliction causing desertification across the continent. Players need to use the knowledge gained across the timelines to find new paths, while engaging in turn-based combat on 3x3 grids. Placement manipulation and party configuration are all important, making this a DS RPG with plenty of depth. Again, DS puzzle games were huge hits, and while we will get to Tetris of course, one that did enjoy a lot of critical success was Mateos. Developed by Peggle Porter's Q Entertainment, this was a match 3 game that, although Tetris-like, had enough of its own ideas to warrant some interest. Also, it had a full-blown story mode about an intergalactic war, which might be an example of going in too hard. To be honest, players used the stylus to navigate groups of coloured blocks or Mateos as they fell from top to bottom. Match 3 or more of the same colour and they would ignite and rise to the top of the screen, taking them and anything above them with it. With that, the goal is to create as big a combo as possible. With power-ups and playable characters that have their own powers, there's a lot to sink your teeth into here, making it a real Nintendo DS hidden gem. Earlier on, we mentioned that Rhythm Heaven became the gold standard of the rhythm action genre, which isn't entirely undeserved. We just happen to think that Elite Beat Agents is just a little bit better. Developed by Innis Corporation, Elite Beat Agents was an early example of why Japanese developers should port their games to the West. The first game, a Japan-only release titled Osu Tatake Owendan, saw massive Western imports, leading Innis to just make a Western-specific game. Elite Beat Agents followed a similar premise, where well-dressed spies of a government agency are deployed to help people in crisis, typically through dancing and motivation like a cheer squad. A dapper cheer squad, but a cheer squad nonetheless. Players use the DS's touchscreen in rhythm with the music while laughing at the absurd comic book style video that plays throughout. It's a tough one, but try not to smile while playing this, even while failing. Few tactical RPG franchises are as highly regarded as the Fire Emblem series. Originally released for the Famicom back in the 80s, the Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon remake shows just how far these games have come, not just graphically or in terms of depth, but also in popularity. These games have been getting pretty popular worldwide releases for a long time now, with Shadow Dragon using the DS touchscreen beautifully while also offering a massive and very dramatic story. Of course, Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon is also a blast to play. If you've never played these games before, Shadow Dragon's story, visuals, combat system, and tools for management all work together to make for a pretty bloody good introduction. If you find yourself having a lot of fun with protagonist Marth and his quest to get back his father's kingdom from neighbouring aggressors, be ready to sink dozens of hours into Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. The original Tetris sold a hell of a lot of Game Boys. There's a certain cosmic harmony then to having Tetris DS on the Nintendo DS. While there are innumerable Tetris updates and sequels out there, this one might be among the very best, but it definitely has a place among the best Nintendo DS games released during the lifespan of the handheld. Tetris DS doesn't forget to include the game you know and love, but it also offers several enhancements and slightly different ways to approach gameplay. The DS touchscreen had the potential to work brilliantly with the iconic puzzler, and Nintendo didn't let players down with what they released. You may not expect much on the visual and music side of things, even if that theme remains as good as ever, but both those elements celebrate the history of not only this game, but also Nintendo itself. Tetris is Tetris, and Tetris always whips. Dragon Quest IX Sentinels of the Starry Sky being released on the Nintendo DS came as quite a shock, as the series had been a staple of the PlayStation consoles for the past several entries. The massive Nintendo DS audience was seen as the right avenue to go though for the 9th entry in the Dragon Quest series, and the result is one of the best JRPGs of the period, and certainly one of the best JRPGs, that's right, from Japan, released for the DS itself. I'm just going to leave that there. With almost overwhelming customization potential for a hero of your own design, Dragon Quest IX Sentinels of the Starry Sky is a voluminous RPG experience. Cel-shaded visuals, a suitably gorgeous and varied soundtrack, and a vibrant array of colours for characters and backgrounds all serve to enhance the large-scale story here. Combat and other RPG elements stay true to the DQ formula, but Sentinels of the Starry Sky still manages to make even grinding pretty dang fun. While Metroid Prime Hunters might not be the best Metroid game out there, the title still has a lot to offer. It's almost underrated among DS games, owing to just how huge that library of games truly is. Hunters wound up getting lost in the shuffle just a little bit, especially compared to its bigger brothers, making it all the more worthwhile to dig up a copy and try it for yourself. As you can imagine, the touchscreen plays a fairly big part in the gameplay. The stylus and screen can be used to help with a number of tasks, including switching weapons, easy aiming, and even transforming into the Morph Ball. It's not intrusive and serves to put a unique spin on the more familiar aspects of the series. Metroid Prime Hunters is a worthy DS outing for Samus, and it hits the most satisfying Metroid beats more than once. Just don't get duped into buying the demo version. Yeah, signed an idiot who did that. Big fan of JRPGs. Nintendogs proved to be a blockbuster franchise for Nintendo, opening up the handheld seemingly to people who don't play a lot of games. Whether or not that bothers you, it's impossible to deny that the presentation, visuals, and full potential of these games doesn't make for a winning formula. No, Nintendogs is rightfully a classic for the DS, it's just that the next 15 entries are even better. Nintendogs allowed players to pick, train, and interact with a virtual dog, and cats were added later, that could sometimes indeed feel like the real thing, and you'd forget that, your dog had gone to the farm a couple of weeks ago and they hadn't come back in that time. It's been 20 years, I think. Shouldn't he be back by now? Nintendogs was and remains an astonishingly impressive simulation game, especially for the time. It's easy to get attached to your dog, who you can even enter into competitions for cash and other prizes, and also pet whenever you like. There's been a WarioWare game for every Nintendo console released over the past 20 years, starting with the Game Boy Advance. The Nintendo DS continues the tradition quite nicely with the release of WarioWare Touched in 2004. This was only the third game in the series, but everyone involved clearly knew what they were doing. You can see this in the way that Touch maintains all the weirder and more irreverent parts that consist of not only the visuals and sense of humour, but with the micro-sized games themselves as well. It's not surprising that Touched includes a dazzling and miles-deep range of bit-sized microgames that have you doing everything from popping balloons to waving goodbye to relatives. The touchscreen is implemented to fantastic effort with these games, and using the stylus has arguably never been this much fun. Still want a new Wario Land game though. Believe it or not, but there are currently 9 games featuring characters from the Professor Layton series, with Professor Layton and the Unwound Future still regarded by some as the very best. Once again, you control Professor Layton and his apprentice Luke in their efforts to understand the mysteries behind a scientist named Dr. Alan Starngun and his time gun. Time gun? Time machine. Time gun would be cool though. Once again, it's up to you to solve a long series of complex mysteries to progress and even enhance the ongoing story. Professor Layton understands the formula of puzzle games down to the finest of details, really. However, where each game shines is in the diversity of the puzzles themselves. Number-based puzzles exist alongside puzzles that challenge your eyes and perception, and that's just the beginning. Those who love these sorts of puzzle games have lauded Professor Layton and the Unwound Future as a masterpiece for combining its many challenges with storybook graphics, great characters, and a really good story, and it's really good that it'll be coming back soon too. The creator of the hilarious, challenging, and overall brilliant Phoenix Wright series also gave us the just as brilliant, if not more so, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. We almost wish Ghost Trick had become a sprawling franchise instead sometimes. The premise of a man who wakes up dead as a spirit and has no idea why is certainly one that could inspire plenty more games. We'll have to just content ourselves with knowing that Ghost Trick Phantom Detective is a perfect DS game, but one that was destined for relative obscurity before an eventual Switch port. You are tasked with restoring your memory and figuring out why you died. Moving between reality and the spirit world, Sissel comes armed with various abilities, including the ability to possess corpses and ask them about their deaths. Lots of fun touches can be found here, with an unexpectedly sweet and funny story too. It had been quite some time since a traditional 2D Mario game had come out before Nintendo turned to the classic style once again. New Super Mario Bros. Was released in 2006, some 15 years after Mario's last adventure in this arena, and helped in its own way to generate a desire for 2D platformers with modern benefits and decades of history of what works and what doesn't. Nintendo put a lot of work into New Super Mario Bros. For the DS, which becomes clear from the moment you're greeted with something that's familiar but plays and even looks vastly different from everything that came before. New Super Mario Bros. Gives the classic Mario universe and concept a stunning coat of paint, and then puts a new spin on everything from the level designs to the power-ups. New Super Mario Bros. Is a blueprint for doing nostalgia right. When it comes to Kirby on the DS, you would at least hope for a fun Kirby game that uses the stylus in interesting ways. Kirby Canvas Curse meets those expectations with a unique game that has you guiding Kirby along rainbow paths with limited ink. This isn't the longest Kirby game by a mile, but it has surprising layers to its gimmick that improve the experience the deeper you go. You'll be surprised at how quickly and easily you take the game's challenge of moving through these stages as efficiently as you can. Remember that your ink to create paths, though, is pretty limited, and that's why it's genius. You'll be even more surprised by how invested you become in the mechanics and progression of Kirby Canvas Curse. Some may find the gameplay to be a little frustrating or monotonous, but most will find it very, very engaging. Kirby Canvas Curse finds yet another way to reinvent its deceptively simple hero. After two very successful titles for the GBA, it was inevitable that we'd get a DS entry in the form of Advance Wars Dual Strike. There they go again. Dual Strike DS? There. The game remains a formidable example of how to flawlessly adapt your franchise to the demands and advantages of a new handheld. Not surprisingly, Dual Strike takes full advantage of the bottom touchscreen here, adding new dimensions to the addictive, challenging gameplay. Dual wielding, commanding officers, additional unit types to control, and a plethora of new and fan-favourite game modes made Advance Wars Dual Strike a pretty appealing package back in 2005, and it's a pretty appealing one now in 2026. It remains one of the most entertaining chapters in this beloved strategy series, with strong graphics, sound, and character design to boot. Advance Wars is as engrossing as it is challenging. For the right kind of gamer, that challenge is essential. While the DS Zelda offerings didn't quite reach the heights of other Nintendo consoles, The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass is still a near-perfect game. It looks and feels like a Zelda title, so let's give it its due. Phantom Hourglass focuses on a large dungeon over the numerous smaller ones that are often found in Link's console adventures. You also have the sometimes frustrating reality that this game functions almost entirely with the DS stylus. The D-pad is used for shortcuts only. Yeah, this does take a minute of adjustment, but it won't be long before it all makes sense. Phantom Hourglass is wonderfully responsive. At no point does this game forget to be a lot of fun to just play and knock around in. The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass is a worthy sequel to the Wind Waker that too many people, even Zelda fans included in that, will too often overlook. Originally released for the Super Nintendo in 1995, this 2008 edition, which is several $100s cheaper than the Super Nintendo version on eBay, upgraded everything from a sight and sound standpoint. They also threw in enough to make this edition of the game stand on its own. While the story of young Chrono, his friends, and a time machine that takes this JRPG classic across thousands of years is completely intact, Chrono Trigger for the DS added several additional features. Starting with how perfectly the touchscreen is utilised, the game also includes an extra dungeon and even yet another ending. Chrono Trigger is one of the best JRPGs ever, maybe arguably the best, so it makes sense that its DS port would be one of the best DS games ever too. We really try to avoid putting ports in these lists much, but that's just how much this game pulls our trigger. Wait a minute. The first Animal Crossing game released for one of Nintendo's handhelds, Animal Crossing Wild World took players even further than the surprise 2001 GameCube hit. The sandbox qualities of Animal Crossing were widely expanded upon here, with even deeper and more absorbing customization options to give players even greater control over themselves and their surroundings. The game also works wonderfully with the touchscreen and stylus, allowing players to manage their inventory, write a message, or even work on designs for their villagers. Playing Wild World today is still impressively fun and engaging, although do keep in mind things like online play are now lost to time. Animal Crossing Wild World proved the success of the first game could be improved upon in just about every way, eventually leading up to the Wild Days of New Horizons during a certain worldwide event that we can't quite recall. Must have just been that fun, eh? 3 awesome Castlevania titles made their way to the DS over the lifespan of the system. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow is the best one for having the most compelling story and characters, as well as for the way it expanded upon the game's tactical soul system. The touchscreen can be a little frustrating at times, but there's something intensely satisfying about using the stylus to successfully seal and destroy the boss you've just been fighting. There's no question that Dawn of Sorrow is a Castlevania title for the difficulty alone. This is also arguably the toughest of the 3 DS Castlevania titles. It's also clear that Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow is a classic of the genre it helped popularize in every sense of the word as well. Exploration is a blast, and you can honestly sometimes get lost simply in wandering around one of the best DS games that visually still takes our breath away after 15 plus years. Nothing used the dual screens of the Nintendo DS quite like the World's Ends With You did. This enthusiastically complex and very different sort of RPG for the DS from Square Enix forced players to actively work with both screens while in combat. The end result for a first-time player is often the same. You start by wanting to drop-kick your DS into the heart of the sun, but you eventually get into the rhythm of the World Ends With You's unique challenges and learn to thrive in this varied environment. The World Ends With You didn't stop there. The character designs and contemporary setting create a world no one is going to confuse with a Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest game anytime soon. You're also bound to fall in love with characters who make up The World Ends With You, so maybe buy that sequel that nobody seemed to buy and we might get another one someday, maybe? Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars is kind of amazing for 2 reasons. It was still pretty wild in 2009 to see an action-adventure game about drug deals and other facets of a criminal rampage on a Nintendo handheld. And then it's also just a really bloody good game. Chinatown Wars was an impressive effort on Nintendo's part to appeal to a larger range of gamers long before Devil's Third broke sales records. Did it work? Far more than you might have guessed. As Huang Li, you've been left for dead, and it's up to you to get some nasty revenge and regain a crucial and priceless family heirloom. There's a lot of other stuff to do as well. Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars looks fantastic for what it is, plays extremely well with the particulars of the DS, and is jam-packed with missions and side quests. It was a big winner on the DS in 2009, and it's still good now, especially if you're looking for something to do until GTA 6 comes out. The 3rd best-selling Nintendo DS game of all time, Mario Kart DS was a hit in every sense of the word. The fact that it came with online play was just the beginning, as imperfect as it was for the time. The game nonetheless brought to the DS everything players wanted in a 5th entry in a decade-old mascot racer franchise. Then it added 16 new tracks, 16 classic tracks, new items, and even a compulsory new battle mode. Mario Kart DS didn't skimp on a thing, offering the same fundamentally fun experience with just the right amount of improvements. Some of the most beloved Mario Kart tracks ever can be found here for the very first time, with a very solid selection of classic tracks from previous games too. Control on the game is still a breeze, and even the graphics and character models look surprisingly good after so many years. Pick it up today and enjoy a very nice surprise indeed. For some fans, actually quite a lot of fans I think, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver still represent the greatest heights the franchise has ever reached. What's wild is how little the series seems to have progressed since this, 20 years ago. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver were remakes of earlier beloved titles, refined and improved for a whole new generation of fans. Both games are loaded to the brim with new features which expand on the beloved gameplay and core components of collecting and training your Pokemon. For instance, instead of you just turning up there randomly, now the creepy old dude has to call a child who brought them Pokemon to breed when their eggs are ready. That's strange, isn't it? There were a lot of incredible Pokemon games on the DS, and we are completely cool if you want to swap in your favourites, but we'll always fly a flag for Lugia. Ho-Oh is alright as well, I guess, but it wasn't quite as good as... The Mario franchise was well over 20 years old by the time that Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story was released for the DS in 2009. Handing the development reins over to Alpha Dream, Nintendo proved with the release of this bizarre, hilarious, and quite challenging RPG hybrid that their iconic mascots could still anchor a must-play title. From an offbeat premise that takes the relationship pitting Mario and Luigi against Bowser to strange new heights, including signing Bowser up to an offshore tax haven, to reflecting that strangeness in the easy to understand but difficult to master gameplay, Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story is the very best example of what the DS achieved and made unique in its time as Nintendo's handheld console of choice. It's a visual treat that challenges Mario fans or just casual players in ways they had never really encountered before. No surprise that Bowser's Inside Story would later get a sequel and a terrific remake on the 3DS, but none have quite the same magic as this, the best DS game of all time. And those were the 50 best Nintendo DS games of all time. Sorry to Carol Vorderman, maybe next time. Let me know what we missed or what was too high, too low, down in the comments, down below. I've been Jimmy for Culture Vultures. It's been good to have you, and I'll catch you when I catch you.